The video game industry continues to radically change as we shift out of the live service open world icon bubble and start moving into whatever is in the future. But all of the terrible decisions that were made hyper-focusing on those live services for years come at a price. And today Warner Brothers is paying a very steep one, or I guess to be more accurate, some of the people at Warner Brothers that make video games are going to be paying for that. The headline is pretty simple. Warner Brothers is shutting down Monolith, Player First Games, and Warner Brothers San Diego. Now look, especially in the case of Monolith Productions, we're talking about a storied and very important studio in the history of video games, with some of their contributions pretty much throughout their entire existence. And there is a lot of information behind this, and information that we can gather from it about the overall state of the industry and where we are headed. I think most of the headlines you will see surrounding this in the next week or so are going to focus primarily on how sad it is that these studios are going away, on how the video games industry continues to see more and more layoffs. By the way, Warner Brothers laid off about 100 people from Warner Brothers Montreal in December. But really, to me, the story that exists here is the one that's behind it. It's the bigger picture. It's the trend of what has been happening within games. And this is just another stone on the same road. We are just seeing the same thing happen over and over again. And while a lot of the specifics of each story is different, the types of mismanagement, the games that are made, and how their failures come to be, those might be different, but the story is the same. So we're gonna dig a bit deeper into the story and hopefully come out on the other side more informed. In any case, hi, I'm Mug, and if you're new here, welcome. And if you're not new here, welcome back. I don't know what you're doing with your hair, but it is working. Remember to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. Helps it reach more people, helps the channel grow. Let's get into it. Now look, the main reasons for what's happening to Warner Brothers are pretty obvious. Anybody can tell you that Kill the Justice League underperformed because it was a not great game that was banking on its live service nature to make up for the fact that it wasn't that great. I've covered in the past already how Rocksteady has lost a lot of its talent, a lot of its leadership, and how a lot of that leadership apparently left because they didn't want to go down this live service rabbit hole. And the latest news we have from Rocksteady is that they are looking to make another Batman game, which kind of seems like a surefire bet, but at this point, we keep coming back to the same analogy. Ship of Theseus are the people that are left at Rocksteady, capable of capturing the magic of the original trilogy all over again. But Rocksteady is staying where it is despite the losses that came from Kill the Justice League. More direct losses that are here and being cut out are Multiversus, which we saw coming. They announced very recently that the game is being shut down. By the way, I've been caught up with some other stuff, but there is an episode of The Decline coming about Multiversus, mostly because I spent 100 hours in that game, and it's a sad story to see a game die twice, honestly. So shameless plug, subscribe for that in the coming weeks. So Player First Games and Tony Hyun's entire team over at Multiversus are closed. Player First Games is no more, and it seems that Multiversus overall put them in the hole about $100 million, which is crazy to think about because how? I don't want to go too deep into Multiversus because that other video is mostly done, but guys, this was the most successful fighting game aside from Smash Brothers. Period. When we look at concurrent players as well as some other factors like how long Multiversus managed to stay at the top revenue earners on Steam, Multiversus blows away pretty much every other fighting game that there has been in both its original launch and to a certain degree in its second launch. It was incredibly successful, especially for the genre, and somehow after that, with its 2 deaths, I guess that there was an insane amount of costs and bleeding regarding the game. This is one of those situations where I'm just very surprised at a game that is this successful, that even if it was just for those 2 months where it was really popular and then they fumbled everything, it made a lot of money, and somehow it is a massive loss. Now, there could be stuff that I'm missing. I don't believe there's any licensing fees or anything going on. All of the IP in the game is owned by Warner Brothers, but there must have been some sort of mismanagement and just overall craziness to go on for a game that was sold and made a lot of money to still put you in the negative for $100 million. Now, before we get to Monolith, Warner Brothers San Diego was working on a unannounced AAA free-to-play cross-platform game. In other words, another live service of some sort, which, looking at the overall situation, guess it was time to let them go. Warner Brothers recently also put out their Harry Potter Quidditch game, which is also a live service and is not performing very well. But really, we have to put things into perspective. If Sony is canceling live service games left, right, and center, it was to be expected that Warner Brothers would fall in line after 2 live service releases that they put a lot of money into were failures. It doesn't matter how much mismanagement makes the numbers go up or down. Overall, these projects are not successful. Kill the Justice League was a pretty big disaster. Multiversus was badly fumbled for a number of different reasons, but in the end, it's another live service, another costly endeavor that didn't produce results, and the one that's really strange is Monolith. Now look, the price to be paid for chasing the live service golden goose has been made pretty clear. Studios get closed, money is lost, but a lot of the other more significant cost is opportunity cost. Just to give an example, Sony might be a huge company that is willing to absorb a lot of the losses because the PS5 sells great. So people can look at all of the live service projects that Sony has tried and all of the ones that they have then canceled and say, well, they got out, it's fine. These people are now working on other projects. But you have to remember that these teams could have been working on something else. Bluepoint, instead of working on a God of War live service game, could have been working on their own original IP, on their own original project. They could have been working on the fabled Bloodborne remake that everybody thought they were making. They could have been doing a lot of other stuff. Bend, instead of working on whatever live service game they're working on, could have been working on something completely different. And that continues with so many other studios. I'm not even getting into the idea of overall resources being allocated throughout the company, resources that were dedicated to these teams tasked with live services, instead of, for example, keeping alive other smaller studios that were working on other projects, or things like Studio Japan in the case of Sony, which is now just a shell of what it used to be. One of the reasons that PlayStation 5 does not have as many of those big AAA exclusives that we come to associate with Sony over the years is because they couldn't produce those and all of the live services at the same time. And the reason I'm going off on this tangent is because I've never seen the impact of live services failing reach the parts of the company that are still working on the stuff that allegedly works and that they're supposed to be chasing now. Monolith was not working on a live service game. They were working on a Wonder Woman game that was announced since 2022. And they specifically wanted to make a Wonder Woman game that kind of imitated a lot of the systems from Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War. Now look, let's be honest, nobody heard this and said, oh wow, that's a great pairing. I'm sure Monolith is gonna make an amazing Wonder Woman game. But they weren't working on a live service Wonder Woman game. They were working on a single player game that was probably going to still be filled with loot boxes, much like Shadow of War was back when. But at the very minimum, they were doing something that a lot of the rest of the industry at the moment is considering to be the way forward, which is to make normal single player games, hope they break even, and if not, they will survive over time, continue to generate sales, just keep the lights on and continue to grow success over success. Going back to basics, if you will. Monolith still got shut down. Allegedly, the entire project got swapped over in overall direction, even swapped directors. It seems like basically the first 2 to 3 years of the game plus its initial pre-production were kind of canned, and they decided to kind of restart the project basically last year. At that point, the game had already cost about $100 million with pretty much nothing to show for it, and they made the decision not just to cancel Wonder Woman, but to close Monolith. Now look, I haven't gone through an extensive list of the people who are at Monolith and who remain from when Monolith has made other stuff, but I think that it's undeniable that as a studio, Monolith is one of the great. I'm not even talking about their older stuff. I'm not even talking about Blood or No One Lives Forever, which are great games, even if no one talks about them since forever. But even the more recent stuff like Fear, which was revolutionary at its time, both the graphical prowess and the artificial intelligence that was featured in that game, which many people will tell you is still better than most artificial intelligences that you can find. Today, insert Splinter Cell guard going, "Who turned off the lights?" And beyond that, Condemned, Criminal Origins 1 and 2, great games, cult followings, people love them, highly influential, especially Condemned 1. I think its melee combat system was very influential around that time. We also had Dark Messiah of Might and Magic, two great first-person games from that time. Just awesome stuff. And of course, Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor was Game of the Year for a ton of people when it came out. Sure, it wasn't the best year. That's one of the reasons that it won, but it is still a great game. And more importantly, Shadow of Mordor featured the Nemesis system, a system that is so good that Warner Brothers had to patent it so that nobody else could ever use it. And that's a thing that they can do, and that is why it's tricky for people to use the whole enemies remember you or evolve, come back, or like build relationships type of thing, because Warner Brother patented it. And that, which they use in Shadow of War as well, is what they wanted to use for the Wonder Woman game. But the pipers come to collect, even the ones that were at least hopefully moving away from that stuff. This is the price to pay. Now, the original story was broken over at Bloomberg by Jason Schreier, but Kotaku got the exclusive of the email response, and there's some stuff I want to dig into. We have had to make some very difficult decisions to structure our development studios and investments around building the best games possible with our key franchises: Harry Potter, Mortal Kombat, DC, and Game of Thrones. So Harry Potter is obviously referencing the fact that there is going to be more Hogwarts Legacy, because to contrast with all of the failure that we've been talking about for Warner Brothers, Hogwarts Legacy, the non-live service game, yeah, that one best-selling game of 2023. Mortal Kombat continues to be a bestseller, even though Mortal Kombat 1 has not been the thing people like. And I think that when they say DC here, they're really focusing, they're talking about Batman, I imagine, because that's the thing we've heard regarding Rocksteady. In Game of Thrones, I don't know why they think Game of Thrones is like that big. Wish them luck. They say this is a strategic change in direction and not a reflection of these teams or the talent that consists within them. The development of Monolith's Wonder Woman video game will not move forward. Our hope was to give players and fans the highest quality experience possible for the iconic character, and unfortunately, this is no longer possible within our strategic priorities. This is another tough decision, as we recognize Monolith's storied history of delivering epic fan experiences through amazing games. We greatly admire the passion of the three teams and thank every employee for their contributions. As difficult as today is, we remain focused on and excited about getting back to producing high-quality games for our passionate fans and developed by our world-class studios, and getting our games business back to profitability and growth in 2025 and beyond. The closures were communicated to staff by email from the head of global streaming and games of Warner Brothers Discovery, J.B. Perret. That looks French, so I'm going to say J.B. Perret. Said that the team needs to regain their credibility and swagger at producing great games, which is an odd word to read, just a weird sentence. And he blames current financial difficulties on the product market fit, and the quality of too many of our new releases have really missed the mark. He said getting our swagger back happens one high-quality game release at a time, and our financial credibility gets rebuilt one fiscal quarter at a time, delivering what we said we would deliver and no big negative surprises. All of this comes amidst the fact that David Haddad, the longtime head of Warner Brothers Games, has exited the building a little bit earlier this year. So it really seems like there's a ship with not much of a captain, and the ship is also starting to get abandoned. I don't think that changing the strategy and closing your studios, including one of the most well-respected studios in the history of gaming, is really going to offer you direction. Because the truth of the matter is, every single large developer, every single large publisher, they don't know what is next. They simply don't know. They are sailing out into the unknown without a clear game plan. But as we move away from the live services, we have to see what's next. I've never done a video where I actively have to like plug 2 upcoming videos at once, just revealing some of the stuff that goes behind like writing and editing and a lot of that stuff. But these are things that the Asian market realized often by accident some years ago, especially Japan, which had so many of their live service attempts fail so hard that they transitioned a lot quicker to, let's just do the things we used to do always. Like, let's just make good games. Let's make good games and see what happens. And that's been working out pretty okay for them, at least for now. And that would be the safe bet instead of trying to find what the next gold mine is. What that means for what remains of Warner Brothers games as they work on Hogwarts Legacy 2 and we assume Batman Arkham or something. And in the case of Mortal Kombat, with Mortal Kombat 1 apparently underperforming, future DLC was cancelled as far as we know, from the most recent acknowledgement of Ed Boon kind of just saying, yeah, the rumors exist, not more, but there were leaks that because of poor performance of its expansion Chaos Reigns, Warner Brothers said, hey, no more of this. And where Mortal Kombat is headed from here is just another one of the question marks that we have. So let me make this clear here at the end of this video. If you had any doubt that all of these companies, EA, Ubisoft, Sony, and Warner Brothers, are paying a very high price for their mismanagement, for their lack of direction, and for their trend chasing of the last 10 years, more or less, you're wrong, because they are paying a price. Unfortunately, as tends to happen, some of the people at the very top won't be the ones to pay it. Sometimes they do. Sometimes the entire cookie crumbles. But in this case, I especially feel very sad over Monolith's just kind of unceremonious shooing off. Now, I say that from the outside. I don't know how Monolith was doing internally or what the latest news were or how the staff was looking, but it still kind of hurts. There are many, many prices to pay as the video game landscape continues to change. And I still remember the first time that I sat in front of this very microphone and said that the AAA industry is collapsing. It's just that they don't know it yet. And 11 months later, we're seeing Ubisoft struggling to survive, and their one chance at it somehow seems to be cursed in the case of Assassin's Creed Shadows. Not gonna get into that here. EA is seeing Apex Legends fall, as well as their empire of FIFA. Sony is finally starting to feel some backlash from its fanbase and the market when it comes to sales, and Warner Brothers is, well, you can see it. And I've got a feeling we're not done yet. In any case, I've been Mug. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, if you enjoy my perspectives and my analysis on the industry, you'll also probably love my reviews, my retrospectives, as well as the other videos like this, from more news-centered to essays digging deep into the industry. In that case, I would recommend you subscribe. It helps out a lot. YouTube's algorithm has been going bananas. So any help is appreciated. Thank you. But the most important thing is thank you so much for watching. An extra special thanks to the patrons up on the $1 patron wall who support everything I do directly. So go out there, enjoy some great video games. There's a lot of them, trust me. And I'll see you again very soon.